Russell Westbrook got traded to the Wizards and John Wall got traded to the Rockets. And also a first-round pick in 2023 is going to the Rockets as well. So we're just going to react to this trade. Who do you think won this trade, the Rockets or the Wizards? I know I put a poll up on the YouTube community tab on who won. People think the Wizards won this trade. And then second, people think nobody won this trade at all. But who do you think won this trade?
To me, it's just like 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other, except...
What?
It's half a dozen is 6.
No, you
six,
just
6.
said it too fast. That's what I was like.
It's such a lateral move to me. I guess the thinking is Russell Westbrook is a more sure thing coming back than John Wall coming back from an injury, and it's worth it for the Rockets to get that pick because they don't have their own pick until 2027. So they don't have any first-round picks in that span. So any assets that they can bring in, it makes sense for them. So
Wait, who doesn't have to 2027?
The Rockets. If I'm not mistaken, they don't have their own first pick until 2027. I could be wrong.
I don't know. I have to fact check that, but
you can fact check me.
Right
but
now.
I'm pretty sure they don't have their own first-round pick until 2027. But nonetheless, even if they do have a pick or two, they don't have a lot of picks. So any picks that they could bring in, it makes sense for them. And like I said, the Wizards are betting on the health of Russell Westbrook. But when you look at these two guys, it's like they're essentially the same player. Over the last 5 seasons, out of guys who have taken 2,500 jump shots, can you guess the two dead last players in effective field goal percentage?
Go on a limb and say
it's
two
Westbrook
guys.
and
It's
Wall.
Westbrook at 78, John Wall at 77. If you put their career averages into the NBA last season, John Wall, his career effective field goal percentage would have been at 419, and Russell Westbrook's would have been at 426. So, like, they're the same dudes. They're good playmakers. They're not great jump shooters. They're elite around the basket. They don't shoot the ball well. Like, you know what they are. They're very similar players. It's just one is coming off a very bad injury and one isn't. But from every report that I've heard, John Wall is great.
Yeah,
and James Harden is one of the first guys who has come out to said that, who have come out to have said that, and he's been playing pickup with him since quarantine started. So it makes sense all around.
I think James Harden gets enamored with the new shiny toy whenever he sees one. I say that because you didn't like how it worked out with Chris Paul. Then you thought Westbrook would be such a great idea. Now you realize it didn't work with Westbrook. Now you play some pickup basketball with John Wall, and you're like, front management, get me this guy, and I won't ask to go to Brooklyn. Right? So then they give him John Wall or whatever. This was a win-win for both teams and for different reasons. It was a win for the Rockets because it raises their ceiling, right? You get a point guard who isn't going to shoot 30 times a game, who's going to, even though Wall is not a good three-point shooter, he knows that. So he's not going to shoot it. He's not going to shoot it. Westbrook doesn't care.
He's essentially smarter.
He's a better playmaker. He's a pass-first point guard, especially when he's playing with players that can score. In Washington, he was asked to score because he was the main option. But when he has Harden and other players, he can probably hit that 10-assist number again. So if they get a fully healthy John Wall, they'll be good. He raises their ceiling, and I know that stat about the efficient field goal percentage, like I heard that, but he shot 50% on corner threes. So he can make open shots, and I think last time he was healthy, I think it was 2017 or 2016, he shot 37% from three. So he's shown that he can shoot better than Westbrook, but also he won't take those shots as much as Westbrook, which benefits the Rockets. For the Wizards, I mean, I think you're not really banking on Westbrook's health. I think you were going to be banking on John Wall's health. Westbrook is a former MVP. He's been pretty durable his whole career.
Oh, no, that's what I meant. Like, they're getting a healthy option rather than...
and Westbrook is a former MVP. He's healthy. He's going to be really, really good for the Wizards. He might average a triple-double again. You know, he might average, not again, but he's going to average another triple-double in his career with the Wizards. But the Wizards, what was their goal? Because the Rockets' goal is to go to the championship, and this raises their ceiling, gives them a better chance, I guess. The Wizards' goal is to what? Make the 8th seed? It's definitely not to tank if they're doing this move. So their goal was either to get rid of John Wall's contract or be a competitive team. And does Russell Westbrook make them a competitive team? He does.
In the East, yeah.
Makes them a playoff team.
I'm under the belief that this is kind of a win-win for both teams in a sense. I think, like Joel said, John Wall is essentially a better player for Harden because he's a playmaker. He also, I don't think Joel said this. He's also a better defender than Westbrook. He's gonna play defense every night. You know that from John Wall. But at the same time, we haven't seen John Wall healthy in almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And so we don't know if that athleticism
Coming
is
off
still
an
there.
Achilles,
Yeah, that
too.
explosion is still there. We don't know, but we know for a fact he's still going to be a great playmaker, and he's still going to be able to play great defense. He played all NBA defense before, so we know that's going to come in. And with Washington, Westbrook is going to come in. He has shooters everywhere, so he's going to come in with a system. And Bradley Beal has learned to play off ball and on ball, so that's going to be good. So you got a guy who can score, take some of the load off. So I think essentially Washington can be a 7th, 8th seed team in the East. It's a pretty good team, and they still have young talent.
He's reuniting with Scott Brooks, his old coach.
And John Wall is reuniting with DeMarcus Cousins. So a little bit of a...
I mean, the thing about Houston is that they're banking on 2 players coming off an Achilles injury to basically be their former self. And how likely is that to happen? I mean, the only thing that's on John Wall's side is time, because he's had about 2 years to recover from this injury. So that's what's on his side.
Supposedly he's been fine since January to come back, and they didn't bring him back. I don't know how that makes sense, why they wouldn't bring him back.
Just to get him,
I think when people failed, I think when people forgot, when Bradley Beal started to become more of a scorer, John Wall's points per game went down because he took a backseat, because he's okay with being that pass first point guard, that playmaker, because that's what essentially he wants to be. That's what he was at Kentucky. So now you got a 35-point scorer on your team. John Wall is going to love that role. He's not going to be Westbrook, I need to take this shot, I need to be a scorer. No, John Wall is going to love averaging that 18 points per game and that 11, 12 assists, 2 steal type of guy.
But I think the Rockets have had probably the quietest and most underrated offseason of any team. You go out and get a sign and trade for Christian Wood, who
Good
I
pickup.
think he's one of the most underrated players in the league. Nobody really knows about him. Eric Gordon is still there. Daniel House is still there. DeMarcus Cousins is coming. Ben McLemore, PJ Tucker's there. Then you have James Harden, we know what he is, and Boogie, John Wall. Hopefully he's healthy.
Boogie could give you 12 and 8 on a good day.
I don't know, coming off the Achilles. I do think Robert Covington, losing him is going to hurt. It remains to be seen, but he was a huge piece of that defense. Defensively,
new coach too.
They're still missing that big. The
reason why I'm not sold on Covington being such a huge loss is because when you saw him, he can't guard guards. He's very slow laterally. He was more of a protecting the rim. They had him play like the 5 and block
Couldn't
shots.
Really guard elite.
Christian Wood is 7 foot basically. So he can block shots. He can be that protector for them. Now they don't have to play small. Now they'll get rebounds. They don't have to, have PJ Tucker being out there. PJ Tucker can slide to the 4 or be a 3.
They can actually have a big playing the 5 that can stretch the floor. They don't have to put PJ as a 6'5" big playing the 5. That was terrible. Now they can put a 6'10" forward out there, Christian Wood, who can shoot the 3 ball. He can also get rebounds, and he can still play defense. Robert Covington, he's going to be missed. But at the same time, I feel like he can be, because offensively he wasn't that good. And he wasn't shooting a good percentage last year. So he can be fixed. That can be fixed. I think they're still going to be a good team because James Harden's a good defender. Eric Gordon's a very underrated defender. He's good. PJ Tucker is a lockdown defender. So I think they're going to be okay.
As much as this move, it's the weirdest thing because it makes sense, but it also, to me, made no sense. I don't know if that makes sense how I'm saying it, but
they kind of traded for the same
exactly.
thing. Yeah.
Wasn't the goal of trading Westbrook to get that contract off? Now you just have the same thing in a more injury prone guy. I guess I
think Westbrook's
better.
was longer.
It was
like a year more.
If I had to say, I would say the Rockets won. If for no other reason than they got a pick, and I think they got a slightly better fit. And more so just because I think this was a loss for the Wizards. I think it was a very short-sighted move. You look at them this season, what are they? What is their goal? You mentioned it before. They're a playoff team in the East, I think is fair to say, but can they upset any of those 6 teams that I was saying before are locks in the Eastern Conference?
Who's your locks?
I don't think so. The Bucks, the Celtics, the Heat, the Nets.
No, they can't upset anybody.
Oh, okay.
So
they're going to be a first-round
upsetting?
exit team if they make it.
And now you have this big old contract on the books. Another thing that has kind of been swept under the rug over the past year or so was before John Wall got hurt, there was always reports about Bradley Beal and John Wall butting heads because John Wall was an alpha. He played through injuries. He was a dog, and Bradley Beal was not that. Bradley Beal was a type B personality, and it always caused issues in that locker room. So what did you replace John Wall with? The biggest type A personality the league has to offer, and we don't think that's going to cause any problems when Bradley Beal is going to try and sit and rest an injury. It's going to be the same thing that happened with John Wall.
I think it'll be just more of a problem on the court because Russell Westbrook, I mean, nobody's really gotten along playing with him. Harden is his best friend, and he wanted him out of there after a year.
And
I think that's more of the problem.
What is Bradley Beal's best skill? Isolation scoring.
I think he's shown it. Yeah, this past season, I think he's shown it.
I think he's shown it because he had to. I think he can. I think he can slide down and still be that.
But you're losing value on him, having him be a spot up shooter to an inefficient ball dominant guard.
I think they'll take turns, but it'll be annoying for Beal because now this team becomes Westbrook's team.
Exactly.
It's not Beal's team.
And you're taking away from the development of Denny Avdija. You're taking away from the development of Hachimura. Even a guy like Thomas Bryant. Like, I know these aren't top of the line
To
names,
be fair, I think that Westbrook actually helps that. Because there's no doubt about it that Westbrook makes it easier on those guys to get to their spots and score.
Maybe getting open looks, because
Hachimura, he's not an isolation guy.
He's more of a pick and pop.
So
I think Westbrook's
pick and roll guy.
Yeah,
Thomas Bryant's more of a pick and pop guy. Like outside of Beal and Westbrook, nobody on the Wizards can really create their own shot. So they're gonna have to dominate the ball most of the time anyway.
Well, Denny is a good playmaker.
I mean, Denny's a rookie, so I'm not even trying to say like he's gonna be this and that. But
I was just speaking from a sense of like total percentage of shots. You already had your isolation scorer in Bradley Beal. I just don't know if this addition makes sense. And moving forward, like, you just put yourself in purgatory because you're going to be a playoff team or at least close. You're going to be at least a 10 seed because the bottom teams in the Eastern Conference are still not that good. So you're not going to be towards the bottom of the lottery at all.
You're going to be right there.
You're not going to get a great pick.
Possible.
So, I watched it with the Nets. It's not a place you want to be. And it's going to take an incredible job, leaps and bounds, to rebuild that when eventually, Westbrook and Beal get older and can't carry the load like they're going to this year. So I don't know. It didn't make much sense for me for Washington. I get it for Houston. It's a big gamble in my opinion because Westbrook coming off that injury, you don't know how he's going to recover with that Achilles wall. And there's still going to be all the chemistry issues.
Do we think Harden still goes or he's?
No, I think he still goes. It really depends if they don't start out good and they're not meshing. He's going to demand a trade. And he should get traded so he can have a chance to win.
And the other problem is if this doesn't work out, if they don't trade Harden this year and this doesn't work out, and they don't, what's the expectations for the Rockets this year? Now that they made the John Wall trade, say he comes back.
I mean,
like
in
70%.
The building, what's their expectation?
They can beat any team outside of LA and the Clippers.
So now, if they don't do that, say they lose in the second round or lose in the first round, it's going to.
They lose in the second round too.
I'm just saying, if they do, it's going to reflect very bad on James Harden because now he's gone through Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, John Wall, all top-tier NBA point guards. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I'm just saying that's what it's going to be spun as. He's had these 3 top-tier point guards, and what's been the main factor that's
not really
remained.
Because if you...
I think the Chris Paul one is
the context behind... The Chris Paul is the only one. The context behind it is that John Wall's coming back from an Achilles, and Russell Westbrook was coming back from a quad injury in the playoffs, and he can't shoot, and he wasn't a fit. And Westbrook, I think more so, has shown that he can't fit with anybody. As the man, Westbrook has not even gone out the first round.
I agree
Harden
with
is
you.
not that. So I think Westbrook
I agree with you.
When it comes to Chris Paul, you can put the blame on Harden for that. But these other 2 guys, nah, I'm not buying it.
I agree with you. I
don't think that'll be the headline, though.
I just feel like there's going to become this stigma of, everybody that goes to play with James Harden ends up underperforming. That's just what I feel like is going to happen if they don't at least get to the point where we think they can be this season.
Okay. I see where both
we had the same discussion the other week when we were discussing trade rumors coming out of Houston. He didn't work with Chris Paul. He didn't work with Russell Westbrook.
So the knock on him is that he doesn't
Austin
work with
Rivers.
great
He had
point
problems with Mike D'Antoni. Everything there has changed. He's been the one constant, and they haven't won. I'm just saying that's what it's going to get spun as, in my opinion.
I don't really think so. I don't see it that way. Yeah,
Of course you don't.
I don't see it. Because I really don't see it that way. Because
I'm saying
John Wall's coming. If John Wall was healthy, but he's coming off an Achilles injury.
I get it, but at the same time, if you go through three people, if you go through three different point guards, all good to elite playmakers, it can't be all of them.
And all guys that he wanted to bring in.
Yeah,
too.
it can't be
and again,
all of them. It got to be some
I'm not trying to
him.
knock Harden. I'm not even saying that I buy into that, but I'm just saying this. And on top of that, the star player in the situation is always going to catch the heat. You look at.
I think it's more so Houston not willing to accept that their time is up as contender.
I 100%
than it is Harden. Than it is Harden trying to shuffle up teammates.
I 100%
really
agree
think
with
it
you
is.
on that. And I think that if Houston was smart, they would have shipped James Harden to Philadelphia this year and gotten Ben Simmons and a couple picks and called it a rebuild.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Especially with a new coach. Now you're putting the coach in a bad position because now he's got to deal with this mess this year, chemistry-wise, and putting all these pieces
if it
together.
Is a mess,
if it turns out to be a mess,
I don't think it's going to be that bad though. With John Wall, I don't think it's going to be.
Yeah,
that bad.
I'm not.
I'm saying more chemistry-wise.
I'm not on the boat
court.
of like trying to have sympathy for Steven Silas. I think he has an MVP player right now, and he has a good roster. He's not put in a position like Tom Thibodeau in New York.
No, talent-wise, it's all there. I'm just saying it's a little bit of a sloppy situation to get thrown into. Your star has apparently requested a trade. Now you're bringing in a disgruntled point guard from somewhere else. Two guys coming off Achilles tears. Like, it just seems like grasping at straws. It seems like a very Tillman Fertitta thing to do. Grasping at straws to contend when it's not really there, and it would make more sense to rebuild under a new regime. Like, that's what it feels like to me.